So I want to talk a little bit about everything. And this video is gonna go in crazy places. Okay, don't mind my train of thought. I literally wrote things down so that it seems at least somewhat coherent. And that there feels like there's a natural flow to what's going on. Add a little bit more to it. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna start this entire talk off with my little anecdote of today. I'm dressed in my workout clothes. I literally have, like, I just got home. I haven't showered or anything. Not that it was a super vigorous class that I'm like, oh my god, I need to, whatever. Okay, the whole point of it being that it was a yin yoga class. So just like a brief overview of what that was about. Essentially, there's yoga that pushes you really hard and makes you tired, and whatever. Yin yoga is kind of the opposite. It's just about low-key, we were just kind of laying there, stretching a little bit, really trying to be one with our breath and, you know, be in the moment. I struggle with that. I struggle with being in the moment. No, I'll get more into that in a sec. And you know, that was nice, though. I'm like, why do I need to pay money to do something that I absolutely probably could have done in bed? Yeah. So afterwards, I realized I probably should have done like a harder workout and then went into that class, because then I think I would have gotten more out of it. But to drive all the way down there just to do that, not really worth the gas that I spent on it. Yeah. But we're laying there, and there were some really nice moments, okay? I can't say that it wasn't a pleasant experience, because it still was. We were laying there in certain stretches. Some stretches really mess me up, okay? Like, I don't know what it is, but we were doing like a straddle position forward fold. That one really messes with me. And, you know, the instructor, she was a lovely lady, I have to say. Her husband was there as well. And she was very sweet, okay? At certain moments, and this is kind of my overall opinion of some yoga experts, it's a little bit culty. It's like there's a spirituality to it, and I understand that. And again, that's gonna be a large premise of the rest of this video, so I understand. But at the same time, I'm like, I just wish you would tell me physiologically or psychologically what is going on here, so that it feels a little bit more earthly and grounded to me than like up here, because I don't necessarily believe the up here, as we'll see. Okay, that probably didn't make much sense the way that I put it. I'm trying really hard to be precise with my words, and I know that a lot of the topics I talk about, they sometimes can be offensive to people, and honestly, when I'm pissed off, I can be a bitch, and I know that. But the other part of that is despite the fact that I really do try to say what I mean and mean what I say in the best way possible, there will always be people in this world who will misunderstand me. They'll make a point to misunderstand me. It's like their life purpose too. So I'm just gonna say whatever the fuck comes out of my mouth. Okay. Anyway, I was in that stretch, and that was quite difficult for me, and she came up behind me, and, you know, she kind of like rubbed my back a little bit, and I was like, that's nice, thank you. I appreciated that. And then at one point, you know, she put like a cold towel, like lavender scent on our foreheads. That was nice. I can't say that I didn't enjoy the experience. I did. And throughout the whole thing, while we're sitting in somewhat uncomfortable stretches, you know, she's giving us inspirational words about us having perseverance, and about seeing the good in others and in ourselves. And very inspirational words, very nice, but it felt like a sermon. It was a little strange in that regard. But I like encouragement. Everyone does. You know, it was cushy, good, felt good in that regard. But there was one point in time, and this is when I really, really lost the ability to be in the moment and just simply enjoy what was going on around me, because it was pleasant, okay, to be in a dimly lit room. It smells nice. It's a perfect temperature. We're stretching in some comfortable ways. Everyone's breathing in together. There's some nice music in the background. But at some point, it was our last pose actually, she starts playing some music, and then, you know, the singing bowl comes on, and I don't mind the sound of a singing bowl, that's not the problem. Then there began some sort of vocalizations. Some vocalizations and a little bit of instrumental that was very obviously to me Native American. Now, I'm not the fucking cultural police, but it is a little bit of cultural appropriation. Okay, yes, true, sure. I don't think there's anything wrong with like appreciating another culture and respecting and valuing what they're doing. But then again, yoga itself is not a Western concept. So we're all kind of going into this understanding that at the end we're going to say namaste as if that means anything to any of us actually in this room, and that's how it's going to be. And then we've accepted that. We've largely accepted that to be the case. Okay. But I just find it to be like the irony, right, of I don't know. This is going to take me back to another story of something else I experienced, but let me finish my thought here. The irony of just like a bunch of old white women, because I was probably one of the youngest people in the room. The rest were older women, suburban white women, kind of being in a room and enjoying the sounds of like Native American chanting. And I'm like, I don't know that any of you have like genuinely engaged with an actual Native American in your lives, right? And then to be in a space doing that where y'all are all paying to be in this class, right, including myself, to be in it's a business. This is a for-profit. Now, nothing wrong against obviously Honey Instructor making her bank. She's allowed to, as she should. We've all got to make our bread somehow. I get that. But you know, it's like it's just like a funny and capitalistic way of doing this. And this reminds me of not to even forget about the fact that like this was land that, you know, was populated by Native Americans and then was conquered and commodified by the United States of America, and then this capitalistic system that we live in. And then right, so now I'm thinking about all of these things while I should be just enjoying and being in the moment, because my bad, okay, I don't know. But it's just funny to me because I have a cultural background that's different from that of the United States of America. And so when I sit in those moments, I feel comfortable and fine. But when I'm in a room full of people who I know a lot of them don't have any other cultural background other than just being American, and they're like, listen, I'm like, this is kind of funny. This is ironic. You know, like if colonization hadn't happened, we'd probably have an actual Native American sitting here, like actually singing this, like for him and his people. Like, this reminds me, okay, of when I was an undergrad and I had taken a class on peace circles, and which is a traditional, you know, native practice in many different lands. Okay, and the professor, this was a course taught in my private university, right? The private university that had also, you know, taken up land that, you know, used to be Native Americans in it. And there were a couple Native students in the class, and this professor, who I think he was earnest. I don't think that he was, you know, trying to be rude in any way. Same thing with this instructor. Like, I think this comes from an earnest place. I don't think it's coming from a negative or ill-intended place. But he had brought in some items that the Native American students considered to be sacred, and they said these items belong in like a temple or belong in a home. They do not belong in this university. Do not bring them here ever again. And Professor listened. Professor did not bring those things back because, you know, he had created an altar in the middle of our peace circle with all of us students. And you know, there was also a discussion in and of itself, like, is it even right that we're all paying tuition to be doing this right now? Because, like, that defeats the purpose. But okay, if we're going to study it like scholars, let's study it like scholars. That's fine, but don't bring those sacred items in here. And that was kind of the feeling that I had today. Not that I have literally any right to speak on behalf of any Native Americans, but it's just like, feels performative, right? So there's the irony in that aspect the capitalistic aspect. But then there's also the irony of just this like love and light that we're trying to promote while we're there. In the moment, it feels really good to be sitting there and be like, oh my God, yes, we should all see the good in each other. We should see the good in ourselves, and everything is going to be okay. And we are persevering. We are strong. We can do it. We really showed up for ourselves today, and we're going to continue to show up for the people around us. Feels so good in the moment, but I guarantee you when most of these people went home, that did not stay with them. Right? If you only feel that when you only feel inspired when you're inside of that yoga class, then that has not enlightened you. That's given you a rush of dopamine. So this reminds me of a video that I recently watched there's a I think he's a clinical psychologist here on YouTube. He's called Healthy Gamer GG. He's great. I love his videos. And I've tried to implement some of his advice into my life recently. That's why I started working out more. Good for me, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But he did make a video on why so many people are like obsessed with self-help, but they never feel better. I started thinking that was myself, and then I thought, no, I just need to be patient. But when I was sitting in that class, that's exactly what I realized, right? So he was talking about that a lot of people, when they're feeling down in the dumps and they don't know what to do with themselves, they turn on this inspirational video, they watch it, they feel like they can conquer the world, and they feel so good. They get that rush of dopamine, right? Because their initial feeling was, I feel sad and unfulfilled and uninspired, and now I feel inspired, so I'm good. Problem solved. And then they lose that, and they lose that, and they lose that over time, and then they watch another video, and then they feel good, and then they lose the dopamine, and it just becomes a cycle of like not actually taking action or not actually feeling fulfilled in what you're doing. And I'm probably butchering half of his explanation of that. He explains it much more eloquently. Go watch it. But that's kind of what I felt like when we were there, because I thought, yeah, I mean, I could speak for myself that I personally do believe. Do I? I believe that we're all connected on this planet. I truly do believe that. No, what I believe in my core, this is what I'm going to say. I'm choosing my words wisely. What I believe in my core is that we as human beings have a duty to each other. A basic level duty to each other. That we are responsible for each other. That we should take care of one another. That we should. In an ideal world, we would. Okay? That is the belief that I have. Now, and I try to live my life like that, regularly, every day. Could I be better at it in some ways? Yes. Now, that rush of dopamine when you're sitting in that class being like, yeah, we're all this, we're all that, this feels so good. I mean, it must be gone the moment that a lot of these women come home afterwards. Because that doesn't seem like the reality that we're living, and especially with the current political state of what's going on, that just doesn't seem to me the reality of most people's actual, genuine opinions nowadays, right? I just don't believe you. Okay. But you feel good in that moment. You're going to go back to another yoga class, and you're going to feel good in that moment. You're going to go back to another class. But you're never probably going to take that and keep it home with you. Do a lot of these people, maybe some do. And if some do, kudos to you. I'm happy about that. Okay. But I'm not convinced. And I was discussing this with my cousin last night. There's this idea of, we have this world called ljudsko. Okay. Biti ljudina. Ljudina ljudsko. To be a ljudino is to be not just a human, but to be humane. And then not just to be humane, because that doesn't even feel like the right word in English. It's to be humanistic. Yes, to be a people's person to a certain extent, but to recognize the inherent value of the people around you. Right? To be a fair person. To be a grounded person. to really have the ability to see the people in front of you. And I think that this is missing in this world. Yeah, we can blame the phones, we can blame the technology, but I think that this idea of really truly seeing each other is not something that we put much value on, especially in the United States. We value our individualism. We value our own sense of, I want to be seen. I think there's a lot of people in this world who have no problem advocating for themselves and for themselves to be seen. And yet, to a certain extent, we struggle, right? Because if everyone is trying to get themselves seen and no one is actually trying to see others, no one's seeing anything. So none of us are really practicing. I can't say none of us, but there's a lot of us who aren't really practicing actually seeing people right fucking here. And I kept gesturing this in this conversation last night, like just right here, right? And we find this issue, I think, even in our personal relationships, right? Where some of us are belittling and looking down at people. We try not to do that. I myself am guilty of that on occasion, and I try not to. I really try not to, but, we catch ourselves sometimes. None of us are perfect. But also to put other people on pedestals. There's no reason to do that either. There's no reason to think that this is just a perfect human that I must look up to, or place unrealistic expectations on them either in that regard, right? It's just to see someone right fucking here. And I do want to pat myself on my back a little bit, because I do think that I have generally that ability. Now, sometimes there's moments where you don't really want to interact with people and you're not seeing everyone and you're not processing everyone. You're dissociating or whatever, and I get that, been there, done that, same, right? But then it matters in certain moments, even if it's a smile to a stranger, right? We have trouble acknowledging each other. Just the human to human acknowledging each other. I think we struggle with that. And I think that's what this yoga class tries to promote. A lot of them do. A lot of spiritualism, new age spiritualism, whatever, they talk about this, but they don't necessarily tell you to practice it in your everyday daily life, to take that home with you. They don't necessarily give you the skills to do that, right? And I can't sit here and tell you that I know exactly what does give you the skills to do that. I'm just pointing out the issue. And I found that when you do this, like, oftentimes people who put you in uncomfortable situations, or people who are maybe being rude to you, being negative towards you, when you just give them that moment of like, hey, I see you, I get it, usually they calm down. At least a little bit. I see you and I get it. Think of the power in that. So look at another human being and be like, I see you, I get it. It's not like, I'm not telling you to shut up. I'm not telling you you're being unreasonable. I see you. I hear you, I see you. Sit with that. Can you do that for others? Or do you spend a lot of your time worrying about yourself being seen? Right? Or are you a Karen screaming at the top of your lungs, get me the manager, because you want to be seen? And I think what neutralizes that, is the person coming, Karen, I see you. I see you, Karen. Okay? That's hard to do when people are being fucking annoying in your face or bothering you or whatever, to look at them in the eyes and be like, I get it. Right. And this has to extend to people beyond people who look like you or sound like you. It's really easy to see people who look exactly like what you see in the mirror. It's really hard to see. It's really hard to see people who don't look like what you look like in the mirror. You see yourself in the mirror every day. So when you see someone who looks like you, you're like, yeah, I see you. But when you find people who don't look like you, can you see them? Would all those women in the room who see an actual Native American person in the street be able to see them? I hope. I would hope. Right? Let this be your journey into the vast theology that is all non-Western philosophies, lifestyles, and religions. Let's expand then, right? If that's don't just your only expansion into the entire human experience and other cultures and whatever cannot just be you going to a fucking yoga class once a week. With your eyes closed and only reflecting inward. Are you truly reflecting inward? Because sometimes we need the outside world to reflect to us what's going on. That's a lot of jibber jabber. Okay, let's keep going with the point that I want to continue on to, which is the other irony of this being that I'm sure a lot of those women, right? They're older white women in the suburbs. I'm sure a lot of them voted right wing very recently. If not, they're going home to their husbands who probably did. Does it make sense that you spend money to partake in spiritual practices, right? And that's why I said, if you're gonna do the fucking thing, just make it scientific, because then we can kind of separate what's going on here. Is this just a workout, or is this a spiritual practice? Well, now it's pretty clear this is a spiritual practice. So you're gonna take on non-white spiritual practices, okay? And then go home to your politics that hate non-white people. I mean, that doesn't fucking make sense. It doesn't make sense. How ironic is that? Right? And again, I said I tried to use my words nicely, but I don't know how else to explain that. Other than it doesn't make much logical sense to sit here and you can say it's cultural appreciation. That's fine. I'm all for cultural appreciation, but are you going home in your everyday life and actually respecting people of actual human beings of that culture when you return and you vote for who you vote for and you post your political opinions on Facebook and whatever? But I don't know. You tell me. Okay. Right, so I just don't get how you can go into that space and then go home and be like, yeah, and go sleep with your husband who votes for people like Donald Trump and for right-wing politics and for Christian nationalism. It's really strange, and I feel like I've spoken about this before, is this pipeline from New Age spirituality into new Age spiritualism being so closely tied to and almost synonymous with traditional Protestantism, right? The pipeline from being hippy dippy to starting a commune to rejecting all of that and then becoming hyper conservative, right? It's your spiritualism, this is what I'm trying to explain. The spiritualism wraps so far around to being this new progressive whatever that it wraps right back around into being traditionalist and white supremacist. It's very strange, this pipeline. Because New Age spiritualism, this I have spoken about in another video, is often tied to consumerism, right? We had to pay to get to this yoga class, point blank period. All right, you pay for all the crystals, you pay for the tarot cards, you pay for this, you pay for that, and then you throw in some Jesus in there somehow, which doesn't necessarily make sense. You take bits and pieces from other religions and other cultures and whatever to try to make it seem worldly, but there's a lot of these New Age spiritual things that are actually rooted in really weird white nationalist concepts that you actually dig deeper into some of them, and I'm not going to go into that rabbit hole right now. Okay. Which is strange because it doesn't feel like you being hip and cool and new and with it and being it doesn't make sense. It's such an oxymoron. But the current day Christian nationalism that I want to talk about, because again, all right, a lot of these women, they go home to their Trumpy husbands or whatever the fuck. And it just, I don't know how you can be cool and with it and want to be new age and whatever, and then come home to an ultra conservative household that is not new age, that is not cool, that is not open minded, that is not not supportive of other people, of other communities and minorities and whatever, that like actively is xenophobic and wants to attack those people. That doesn't make sense to me. So we're sitting in the space, and I'll get to that in a second. I'll go back to my other thought. But this is also dangerous grounds that I'm talking about, right? Because not all of this is just based on the color of their skin and these white women, blah, 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 blah. Because that's exactly what the nationalists want you to do, right? That's exactly what nationalists want us to do, is to separate ourselves by the color of our skin and separate ourselves by our other identities, this identity politics. That's what they want us to do, to differentiate ourselves. So I have to backpedal a little now, okay? I recently saw this video about this man, and I don't remember his name, but you guys can look it up. He was a former neo-Nazi. Okay. And he starts explaining the ways in which neo-Nazis approach their recruits. That's the word I'm looking for. And now you're wondering, Anna, what are you talking about? What is this? I don't even know how this connects. Just give me a second, okay? I'm getting there. You'll see how this connects in a second. So he starts talking about how they would recruit these young men into their essentially gangs. So he would approach them, and the first thing that he would do is convince them that their whiteness is the most important identity that they have. And when he got into this whole, extremism, this was in the 80s, and he was saying that most people didn't identify themselves first and foremost by their race. So that's a bit of an issue, right, with the first half of the video that I made. And it's kind of an issue of our modern times in general, is that, yeah, we do actually, like, one of the first things we do is identify ourselves by our race, and then we break down all of the ways in which we are and are not privileged, right? And on one hand, there's power to that. On another hand, it promotes this idea. It makes this, what he's about to say, very easy. Because at the time before, it was more difficult, right? He said back then, you'd find a white man on the street, whatever. His first instinct is not necessarily to say, I'm a white man. He might consider himself to be a Catholic, middle class, whatever. So the first thing they had to pitch to this man was that he was white first and foremost, because that's how people viewed him first and foremost. Then they had to pitch the idea that not only are you white, but everyone else around here is against you for the fact that you're white, okay? And because everyone here is against you for that fact, this is an existential threat to you and your other white folk. So let's really, really think about this idea of an existential threat. Okay, let's just chew on that thought. Okay. Because all types of nationalism do that exact same thing, including the nationalism that exists in the United States today. Right? The Muslims are an existential threat. The Mexicans and the other illegal Latinos, okay, I say that in air quotes, that's not how I would refer to them in my personal life. They're an existential threat. The Chinese, they're an existential threat. The gays, they're an existential threat to your way of life. Bro, as if any of those people have any power over a white man, like in our current government. So I'm going to make this no, and then I'm going to go back to the point that I want to say. I simply do not understand why poor white people in this country look up to rich white people in this country, because it's like, bro, they're clearly not on your side. Like, us poor people are all in this together, and it's those rich white people that you idolize that are exact same type of people who got you in this position. Because I can tell you right now, it was not a brown person, it was not a black person, it was certainly not a woman who was in power and made you generationally poor. Dear fucking Alabama, dear Mississippi, dear Louisiana. They didn't fucking make you poor. They didn't make the laws that made you poor. They didn't make the economy that made you poor. Who made all of that made you poor? Right, other rich white people who you have now revoted into office. End note. Going back to what I was going to say. Okay. So, I'm making a communist argument, okay? Fucking bite me that there are rich people in this world who don't give a fuck about the 99.9999999 rest of us. Okay. Cool. Let me continue my point. So how did this man, he was a former neo-Nazi, so how did this man come out of Nazism? Okay, back to this YouTube video I was watching. I didn't watch this entire video. I should have. But I was watching it in bits and pieces throughout the day. I didn't finish it. He explains that he got out of Nazism because he started going to raves. And now, personally, I don't like raves. I've been to a few there. It's not my cup of tea. I don't really like the drugs. Okay. And I don't really like that music. I don't enjoy it. It doesn't really do something for me. Do I like going to a little clubby club and dancing it up a little bit? Yes, I do. Just not that. That's okay, though, because I respect the raves for creating this environment, right? He came into this environment. He's dancing with a bunch of people bumping it up. Okay, he probably had a little bit of Molly something in him too, right? Because we know that a lot of these dudes, they need a little bit of drugs to activate the empathy pathways in their brain. No offense, but it's a thing. We all know it. And he looks around him and he realized, whoa, this is a bunch of like people from all different places around me. This is a really diverse group, but we're all having fun together. Like, hey, maybe these people aren't an existential threat to me. Like, maybe they're just chilling and maybe I'm just chilling and maybe we can have fun together. Isn't it that simple? Yeah? Isn't it that simple? So you really have to ask yourself, I think there's when this is part of the point that I wanted to make. I was talking about this concept of being able to see people, right? And I think that what happens a lot with nationalism is that these really loud yappity yap politicians and all their little political parties and whatever, they play to a certain audience and make them feel seen. Right, because everyone wants to be seen so bad. So finally they have a politician looking at them like this and making them feel seen. And that feels really good. That feels really good to be seen. We all want to be seen. But you have to ask yourself, what is the motivation behind this person making me feel seen? Is this person a Ludino? Or do they want something from me? And ask yourself in all of your relationships this. Ask in all of your relationships this. Is this person love bombing me because they want something from me? Or are they actually like being good and seeing me and meeting my needs because they're just a good person who that's just how they treat the people in their life. They don't want anything in return. Do they want something in return? These politicians want something in return from you. They want your loyalty. They want your vote. They want your fucking tax money. Tax breaks for the billionaires, not for the rest of us who are paying hella for eggs. What do they want from you? They want your power, they want the influence, they want your loyalty, they want your money. All politicians, all of them are the same. Read the Dictator's Handbook. All politicians are the same in that regard. Okay? The question is whether the system puts them in check or not, and we have now created a system, particularly in the United States, where the system is not putting it into check, and that's the issue. That's what I'm scared of. Okay? And we shouldn't live in fear, but the point being is these people, they make us feel seen, right? If you're in an extremist group, these leaders and this community around you, and even if you're in the yoga studio and whatever, in that moment, they make you feel so seen. that feels that feels so good. What's their motivation behind that? And this, being in this space where you feel seen and the other people look and remind you of yourself, this is what we call community. And we are so thirsty for community. We all are. We are all social human beings thirsty for community. Even those people who say, I want to go off into the woods and be a recluse and be off the grid. No human is what they are and who they are without other human beings. Another human being taught you language. Another human being taught you how to make food for yourself. Another human being is, teaching you how to garden. Right? You can go off the grid, but at the end of the day, it's another human being who taught you how to do all of that. And you can't escape us. Sorry. You can't escape human beings. You can't. And even if it's your little micro community commune of just you and your other little cult-like friends in the forest, that's a community. You and your little immediate family starting a farm in the middle of bumblefuck wherever, that's your little community. We all have it. We're nothing without another human being or two. Nothing. You needed at least two to fucking put you on this planet. Right? So what I suggest, right, though, is that when we create these spaces of community, we have to be very, very particular about what we're basing this community off of. Right? Because I personally don't think that communities that are simply based on kind of superficial identity isn't always sustainable and is always long-lasting. And it creates small communities that might not be able to interact with other communities very well. Right? So I want to go back to this. Yudsko, humanism. The humanism. A community is only a sustainable community if it is rooted in humanism. I can tell you right now, neo-Nazi groups are not rooted in humanism. They're not. They're persistent. They're persistent like a cold sore that won't go away. They're persistent. If you hear snoring, that's my cat. Extremist groups are persistent. Okay. But they're exactly what will run us all to the ground. And I don't want to fearmonger, but it's just the truth, right? Unless we build all communities around the idea of humanism and teaching ourselves, right, to see others as we also want to be seen. Until we do that, we're not going to make any progress. On an individual level and on a sociocultural level, on a global level. Community must be rooted in humanism. It must be rooted in, no matter if the person in front of you looks like you or not, you can recognize the humanity within them and see them right fucking here. Those are the only communities that are going to sustain themselves in the long run, given that we aren't all blown up by nuclear warfare soon. Sorry. But that's the truth. That's the truth of the matter. So, was my yoga class nice? Yes, it was nice. I still enjoyed it. But there was a lot to think about. Okay? And can you believe that, this whole thought process that it took me damn near 40 minutes to discuss out loud is, kind of what I thought about in the span of 5 minutes in my head while I was laying there. I was not present in the moment at all. But I think it was important that I got it out now. And I feel like I have a lot more to say about a lot of these things, but that went everywhere. Hope you enjoyed.